Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and here are four big stories for today. So, in my three big stories, which often expands to four or five or more, I try to focus on the biggest stories that are going to have the biggest effect on Ukraine. So, I'm taking the first like six of these as one package of what's going on in the international community, because there are things happening all around the globe that can affect Ukraine. For example, new Hungarian law may displace thousands of Ukrainian refugees. Hungary's decision to limit aid to Ukrainian refugees from specific regions may force many to return to Ukraine or face homelessness. There are 31,000 Ukrainian refugees at this time. Okay, so that's pretty significant. Second, now this is part of that first story. Finnish authorities are going to ban Russians from buying real estate in the country. The Ministry of Defense of Finland has prepared a bill to prohibit Russians to conclude real estate transactions in the country. According to him, the draft bill proposes to allow the purchase of real estate only Russian citizens with a permanent residence or permit in Finland. So in both cases, we're talking about either displaced Ukrainians in Hungary or displaced Russians who likely fled from Putin's mobilization. Okay, and they may have to go back to their own country or figure something out. He added that the ban could be lifted if Russia stops fighting Ukraine and does not unleash new military conflicts. Well, good luck on that. New U.S. nuclear strategy includes deterrence of China for the first time. According to the New York Times, it stipulates that Washington must be prepared for a threat from three countries. Who? Russia, North Korea, and China. Okay. And the United States is making unprecedented commitments to the Philippines that stretch beyond military aid. They're doing that for a reason. Here's the map. Here's Russia. You know what Russia looks like. Here's China. Now, Russia and China are pretty cozy, and you know that. But China is, to the U.S., the big geopolitical threat that they're trying to keep their eyes on. Now, China wants Taiwan. And Taiwan is like, there's almost like an Eastern NATO kind of forming between Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines, and to some degree, potentially Indonesia. And it depends on how involved China is, whether India will weigh in against it, because India is India and China just don't like each other. But I don't think they would naturally get in. That's why they're not in yellow. And Australia would also be yellow here on this side. So they're kind of creating a counterbalance against China here. So that's what's going on in the rest of the world. Okay. New contours of the global order. If you think I'm making this up, Putin and China's Quang tout deepening relationship at the Kremlin. So, as Russian President Vladimir Putin welcomed Chinese Premier Li Qiang to Moscow on Tuesday, the two countries highlighted their large-scale joint plans and applauded the emerging results of their recently scaled-up economic partnership. Our trade relations are developing successfully. For his part, as quoted by AFP via the Kremlin's translators, Li said that the Chinese-Russian relations are at an unprecedentedly high level and had created a strong impulse for further deepening of bilateral relations. Our partnership and strategic cooperation is especially important in a situation where new contours of the global order are being formed. Okay, so this map really looks like that, and we just don't know what China is going to do in the long term. Okay, the Dutch Ministry of Defense announced plans to donate 51 advanced drone detection radars to Ukraine by the end of 2024. We have never put any restrictions on the weapons that we have delivered to Ukraine, and we do not intend to do it now. Ukraine has already put those weapons to good use. And the European Union's Borrell calls for lifting all restrictions on Ukraine's use of Western weapons against Russia. He argues that this could disrupt Russian military operations. Now, if that did happen, the Russians would need to recalculate in a huge way if all weapons bans were lifted and the U.S. weapons, for example, could be used inside Russia at long distances. It would create a significant headache for Putin. Meanwhile, Scholz says that Ukraine did not consult Germany over Russia's incursion. Ukraine didn't consult the U.S. either, apparently, or any other partners. He expects the operation to be limited in time and scope, that is, the invasion of Kursk, while confirming plans to reduce the aid for Ukraine, saying that the G7's plan will compensate for it. So it's a pretty awkward moment for the Germans right now, as they're saying that they support Ukraine, but we are reducing the amount of support for Ukraine. Czech President Peter Pavel said that it's Ukraine's unlikely to achieve a 100% just peace. Now, this is a warning. This is not a statement of what should be. He's saying this is the trajectory that we're on currently. President Pavel said the objective should be to get as close as possible to a just peace. Now, Pavel has been very supportive of Ukraine. He's not antagonistic to the Ukrainians. This guy was a former NATO general, like head of NATO in some capacity, and he knows what he's talking about, and he's warning about what could happen if they're not careful. Meanwhile, in Africa, the military governments of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger addressed a letter to the UN Security Council condemning Ukraine's alleged support for rebel groups after a July clash where Tuareg rebels reportedly killed dozens of Russian Wagner mercenaries. Well, the Ukrainians were just trying to kill Wagner. They had no real interest in whatever else was going on in Mali. The Kremlin abruptly changed course recently, issuing new directives instructing domestic propaganda outlets to prepare the Russian population for a new normal with Ukraine seizing Russian territories. This is what's going to be happening for a while, it seems. It seems like Ukraine's going to be very successful for much longer than we initially thought. Like, they're not trying to stop them with hardened troops because Russia really just wants Pokrovsk. Here's Vladimir Solyov saying everyone who says that the enemy is weak, demoralized, and doesn't have equipment needs to stop lying. But he was one of those people lying earlier on. It's bizarre to watch. Now, here's big story number 2. Dangers lurk behind Ukraine's ban on Russian-linked Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And I was reading the whole article here with some great interest. As you know, the Verkhovna Rada banned the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate. Now, they changed the title of that, but that doesn't mean anything. They haven't really changed. They're still part of the same denomination, just from a different name. But there's potential problems here. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church is affiliated to the Moscow Patriarchate. The church no longer has the MP after its title, but it's still the same thing. The two churches are not canonically separated. They're still part of one organization. The UOC remains a structural division of the Russian Orthodox Church. Even the head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the Metropolitan, and 20 other Ukrainian Orthodox Church priests were found to have Russian citizenship. So now the trick here is this. They've outlawed the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate. Now, they've done that, but they might have hit too broadly. Rather than dealing with each individual issue that happens with this and paying attention to it, they have just banned this church, and it could backfire. So the bill will come into force after 30 days. The best solution for these churches would be just to sever all ties with Moscow, but it might be tricky because they've already changed their name, even if they haven't changed anything else. Now, Dmitry Volk is the head of the Research Center on the Rule of Law and Religion. He does not believe that the law fully complies with the international human rights norms, citing Articles 18 and 22 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And so it could become a difficulty for Ukraine, quite a headache. But they are in a time of war. This church has been used as a vehicle to smuggle in propaganda and other resources on Moscow's behalf. Now, this last line was a good summary of the problem. While there's no excuse for the warmongering support for Russian aggression shown by Kirill and at least the leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church, the situation within individual congregations of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is of the Moscow Patriarchate, is not straightforward. So that's where we are with that. Okay. Next big topic, Kennedy 24. Now, you have Trump and you have Kamala Harris, and then you have this third party, and third parties in the United States almost never get any traction. His name is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the son of Robert Kennedy, the nephew of John F. Kennedy, our former president. And he could be a spoiler. And it looks like, although he's been a lifelong Democrat, he would be taking more votes away from Trump than he would be taking away from Harris. Now, this is John F. Kennedy's grandson speaking at the Democrat convention. Once again, the torch has been passed to a new generation, to a leader who shares my grandfather's energy, vision, and optimism for our future. That leader is Vice President Kamala Harris. Notice it wasn't his uncle, Robert Kennedy. Now, Robert F. Kennedy is an acquired taste for his political views, but he also hangs out with the likes of Scott Ritter. Here you go. And Donald Trump says that he is certainly open to RFK Jr. playing a role in his administration if he drops out of the race. I like him. I respect him. He's a brilliant guy. He's a very smart guy. I've known him for a very long time. I didn't know he was thinking about getting out, but if he's thinking about getting out, certainly I'd be open to it. Well, okay. What does that mean? Since the beginning of August, Harris has been steadily climbing in the polls while Trump has been faltering. And she's going to get a bump in the Democratic convention. But if Robert Kennedy drops out on Friday, which it looks like he might, he's going to address the nation on Friday, August 23rd. That's just after the Democratic National Convention, and that's time to pop the balloon for Harris so that all that bump will dissipate. Now, Larry Sabato at the University of Virginia even echoes Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is dropping out Friday and endorsing Trump. If true, Kennedy is barely relevant at 5% and falling. He can't transfer that much support to Trump. His backers will splinter. RFK Jr. makes Trump-Vance ticket even weirder. Okay, but let's say that's all true. It still becomes just a Harris-Trump race. All the accounts are posting an identical message, and all the accounts are recently created with no other activity. Impressive, they would specifically mention the city I live in, Las Vegas. So, Prime Time 99, 6 minutes ago, just donated to the Las Vegas Rescue Mission homeless shelter in your backyard, as you opt to prioritize foreign militants over your neighbors and fellow Las Vegans. Vassal state Ukraine, 12 minutes ago, just donated to the Las Vegas Rescue Mission homeless shelter in your backyard, as you opt to prioritize foreign militants over your neighbors and fellow Las Vegans. Okay, that doesn't seem like a coincidence to me. Okay, 3 last things. Birthday in the trenches. Happy 22nd birthday. That's a tough way to experience your 22nd birthday. And then in life, it's important to stand out. And you'll understand this if you watched yesterday, the weird way that Putin had his headphones on. And then finally, my friends, I want to show you this. My son 3D printed this. It's pretty awesome. He gets it. I think that's awesome, and I want to give him a shout out. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.